Tearful Brielle mistakes a stranger at the airport for her cousin and hugs him. But when the man turns out to be a billionaire hiding from his past, her accidental embrace ignites a love neither expected and someone else won't allow. Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. The noise of Hartsfield-Jackson Airport buzzed around Brielle Sanders as she stepped off the plane. Her head was pounding and her eyes were red from crying. The last 3 days visiting her father in the hospital had drained everything from her. At 28, Brielle had hoped they could finally fix things between them, but even lying in a hospital bed, Harold Sanders remained as cold and distant as he'd been since she was 10 years old. The doctors said he might not make it through the month, and all he could talk about was how disappointed he was that she hadn't become a lawyer like he wanted. Just once, she whispered to herself as she walked through the terminal. I wish he could see me. People rushed past her, bumping her shoulders, but Brielle barely noticed. Her mind was still in that sterile hospital room in Memphis, still hearing her father's voice. All these years and you're still wasting your talent at that little music studio. Brielle clutched her purse tighter. The studio was hers. She'd built it from nothing. She helped local musicians record their demos, gave voice lessons, and even had a waiting list now. But to her father, if it wasn't a prestigious career, it didn't count. As she rounded the corner toward baggage claim, Brielle's eyes caught sight of a tall man in a grey coat. Her heart jumped. From behind, he looked exactly like her cousin Marcus, who had promised to pick her up. Without thinking, overwhelmed by emotion and exhaustion, she rushed forward. "Marcus!" she called out, her voice breaking. The man didn't turn, probably couldn't hear her over the airport noise. Brielle reached him and wrapped her arms around his waist from behind, pressing her face against his back. "Thank you for coming," she said, the tears she'd been holding back finally spilling over. "I didn't know if I could make it home alone after everything." The man went completely still, and that's when Brielle realized something was wrong. The cologne wasn't Marcus's usual scent. The coat fabric felt different, more expensive. Slowly, the stranger turned around, still within the circle of her arms. Brielle looked up into the face of a man she had never seen before. He was tall, with deep brown eyes that seemed startled but not angry. His jawline was sharp, his skin a warm olive tone, and his dark hair neatly styled. He wasn't smiling, but there was something in his expression that wasn't rejection. "Oh my God," Brielle gasped, jumping back and covering her mouth. "I'm so sorry, I thought you were my cousin. You have the same coat. And from behind, I'm so embarrassed." The man looked at her for a long moment. His eyes moved over her face, taking in her tear-stained cheeks and red eyes. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice low and surprisingly gentle. The question, so simple and yet asked with such genuine concern, made Brielle's composure crack again. She quickly wiped at her eyes. "So I'm fine, just had a rough few days. I'm really sorry about that. I don't usually go around hugging strangers in airports." The man's mouth twitched, almost forming a smile. "That's a shame. It might make air travel more interesting." The unexpected response made Brielle laugh despite herself. The sound seemed to change something in the man's expression. It softened, like ice beginning to thaw. "I'm Cassian," he said, extending his hand. "Brielle," she replied, shaking it briefly. His hand was warm and his grip firm but gentle. "And I should really let you get back to whatever you were doing before I assaulted you with unwanted affection." Cassian looked around at the busy terminal, then back at her. "I was just heading to baggage claim. Would you like to walk together? You seem like you could use a friendly face even if it's not the one you were expecting." Brielle hesitated. Her mother had raised her to be cautious of strangers, especially men in airports. But something about Cassian's eyes made her feel safe. They were sad eyes, she realized, like they understood something about pain. "Sure," she said, "I need to go there anyway." They walked side by side through the terminal. Cassian kept a respectful distance, but Brielle noticed how other travelers seemed to move out of his way, as if sensing something commanding about his presence. "So," he said as they walked, "was this a business trip or personal?" Brielle sighed. "Personal. My father's in the hospital. It didn't go well." Cassian nodded, not pressing for details. "I understand difficult family situations. I just returned from settling my mother's affairs. She passed last month." "I'm sorry," Brielle said, looking up at him. "That must be hard." "We weren't close," Cassian replied, his voice flat, "but thank you." They reached the baggage claim area, and Brielle spotted her cousin Marcus waving frantically from across the room. He was wearing a blue jacket, not grey at all. She realized her tired mind had played tricks on her. "There's my actual cousin," she said, pointing. "I should go." Cassian followed her gaze and nodded. But as Brielle turned to leave, he spoke again. "Brielle," he said her name carefully, like he was testing how it felt. "I haven't been hugged in a very long time." He paused, and something vulnerable flickered across his face. "Would you let me take you to coffee sometime?" Brielle stared at him, surprised. "You want to have coffee with the emotional wreck who mistook you for someone else and cried all over your expensive coat?" The corner of his mouth lifted slightly. "I find I prefer honest emotion to false politeness. Too much of my life is filled with the latter." Before she could think too much about it, Brielle pulled out one of her business cards from her purse. It was simple. Brielle Sanders, Harmony Studios, with her phone number and the studio address. "If you're serious, you can call me here," she said, handing it to him. "But no pressure. Sometimes strangers are meant to stay strangers." Cassian took the card, looking at it thoughtfully before slipping it into his pocket. "It was nice meeting you, Brielle Sanders of Harmony Studios, even under unusual circumstances." With that, he turned and walked toward a different baggage carousel, his grey coat disappearing into the crowd. Marcus rushed over to her, full of apologies for not being at the gate. "The parking was a nightmare. How was the flight? How's Uncle Harold?" Brielle hugged her cousin properly, trying to focus on his questions, but her eyes kept drifting to where Cassian had disappeared. "Bri, you okay?" Marcus asked, concerned. "Yeah," she said, shaking her head to clear it. "Just tired." "Take me home?" 3 days later, Brielle had almost forgotten about the airport encounter. She was back at her studio, helping 16-year-old Zoe prepare for a school talent show, when her phone rang with an unknown number. "Harmony Studios, this is Brielle," she answered, mouthing "Take 5" to Zoe. "Hello, Brielle. This is Cassian Wells, from the airport." His voice was exactly as she remembered it, deep and measured. Brielle's heart did an unexpected flip. "The man I mistook for my cousin and emotionally traumatized. I remember." There was a pause, and then she heard something that surprised her, a genuine laugh. It was a good sound, rich and warm, but with a rusty quality, as if it wasn't used often. "That's one way to put it," he said. "I'm calling to see if that coffee invitation is still open." Brielle found herself smiling. "I thought you were just being nice to the crying woman." "I'm rarely just nice," Cassian replied. "Ask anyone who knows me." "Is that supposed to be reassuring?" Brielle laughed. "It's supposed to be honest. I would like to see you again, Brielle, if you're willing." She thought about it for a moment. Why would someone like him, who clearly had money, judging by his clothes and manner, want to have coffee with her? But then she remembered how he'd looked at her, like he was seeing something valuable. "Okay," she decided. "When? Is tomorrow at 3 too soon?" "There's a cafe called Rosemary's on Peachtree Street." Brielle knew it. A quiet, upscale place where local business people met. "I can do that." "Good," he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "I'll see you then." After hanging up, Brielle stared at her phone. What had she just agreed to? Zoe poked her head into the office. "Was that a guy? You're smiling all weird." "It's nothing," Brielle said quickly. "Just a coffee." "Uh-huh," Zoe grinned. "That's why you're blushing." Rosemary's Cafe was busier than Brielle expected for a Tuesday afternoon. She wore a simple blue dress that brought out the warm undertones in her dark skin, with her hair in its natural curls. She'd debated straightening it but decided against it. If Cassian was going to see her, he should see the real her. She spotted him at a corner table, away from the windows. He wore a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing strong forearms. When he saw her, he stood immediately. "You came," he said, pulling out her chair. "I said I would." Brielle sat down, suddenly nervous. "Do you usually expect people not to keep their word?" Cassian took his seat across from her. "In my experience, yes." A waitress came and took their orders. A latte for Brielle and black coffee for Cassian. "So," Brielle said once they were alone, "what do you do, Cassian Wells?" "I work in finance," he said simply. "Investment management, primarily." "That sounds—" Brielle searched for a polite word. "Boring?" Cassian supplied, that almost smile appearing again. "I was going to say complex, but sure, boring works too." He laughed again, that same rusty sound. "What about you?" "Harmony Studios, you're in music." Brielle nodded, relaxing as she talked about her passion. "I help local musicians record demos, teach voice lessons, provide a space for people who can't afford the big studios. It's small, but it's mine." "You love it," Cassian observed. "I do. My father hates that I chose music over law school, but it makes you happy," Cassian finished for her. Their coffee arrived, and they fell into easy conversation. Cassian asked questions about her studio, her students, her favorite music. He listened intently to every answer, as if cataloguing the information for later. But when Brielle tried to ask about his work or family, he gave short, vague responses before turning the conversation back to her. After an hour, Brielle realized she'd done most of the talking. "I'm sorry, I've been rambling. Tell me something about yourself that isn't about work." Cassian considered this, turning his coffee cup slowly. "I have a cabin in North Georgia. When things get too loud in the city, I go there. No phone, no internet, just books and silence." "That sounds lonely," Brielle said without thinking. "It is," he admitted, looking directly into her eyes. "But sometimes lonely is better than the alternative." "Which is?" "Being surrounded by people who only see what they want from you." The raw honesty in his voice touched something in Brielle. She understood what it meant to be seen as a means to an end. Her father had always viewed her as an extension of his own ambitions, not as her own person. "I think I understand that better than you might expect," she said softly. Cassian checked his watch and frowned slightly. "I have a meeting I can't miss, but I'd like to see you again, Brielle. Would that be all right?" "Yes," she said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. "I'd like that." He paid the bill despite her protests, then walked her outside to where her car was parked. "Thank you for today," he said, standing close but not touching her. "It's been a long time since I've enjoyed a simple conversation this much." "Me too," Brielle admitted. "You're easy to talk to." "That's not what most people say about me." His eyes crinkled at the corners. On impulse, Brielle reached out and squeezed his hand briefly. "Then most people aren't really listening." Something flashed in Cassian's eyes, surprise, warmth, and something deeper she couldn't name. For a moment, she thought he might pull her closer, but instead, he stepped back. "I'll call you," he said, his voice slightly rougher than before. As Brielle drove away, she couldn't help wondering about the man who'd seemed so startled by a simple touch, who laughed like he was remembering how, and who listened like every word she said mattered. Over the next 3 weeks, Cassian called regularly. They met for coffee, then dinner, then a walk through the botanical gardens. Each time he was attentive, thoughtful, and private. He never talked about his work beyond vague references, never mentioned friends, and steered conversations away from his background. But he remembered everything Brielle told him. When she mentioned a book she wanted to read, it appeared on her desk at the studio the next day. When she talked about a student struggling to afford lessons, Cassian suggested a scholarship program she could start. And later, an anonymous donation arrived that funded it for a year. They never met at high-profile restaurants or busy places. Cassian preferred quiet, tucked-away spots or walks in empty parks. He never tried to kiss her, though sometimes his hand would brush hers, and he'd look at her with an intensity that made her breath catch. One evening, as they sat on a bench overlooking the city, Brielle finally asked the question that had been bothering her. "Cassian, what are we doing? We've been seeing each other for weeks, but I feel like I still barely know you." He was quiet for so long that she thought he might not answer. "I like being with you," he finally said. "You make me feel normal." "Normal?" "Like just a man, sitting with a beautiful woman, enjoying her company." "Not..." He stopped abruptly. "Not what?" Cassian shook his head. "It doesn't matter. What matters is that when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to be myself, not who everyone expects me to be." He reached over and took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her skin. It was the most deliberate touch he'd initiated. "I know I'm not giving you much," he continued, "but I'm asking you to be patient with me. Can you do that?" Looking into his eyes, Brielle saw vulnerability and hope. She squeezed his hand. "Yes," she whispered, "I can do that." That night, when he walked her to her door, Cassian finally kissed her. It was gentle at first, almost hesitant. But when Brielle wrapped her arms around his neck, he pulled her closer, kissing her with a hunger that took her breath away. His hands trembled slightly against her back, and when they broke apart, his eyes were dark with emotion. "Good night, Brielle," he whispered, pressing his forehead to hers for a moment before stepping away. She watched him drive off in his sleek black car, touching her lips where she could still feel his kiss. What she didn't see was the black SUV parked down the street, or the long-lens camera pointed at her door. A week later, Brielle was at the grocery store when she saw it, a tabloid with the headline, "Reclusive Billionaire Cassian Wells, Secret Romance with Unknown Woman." And there they were on the cover, Cassian kissing her at her front door, his face in profile but clearly recognizable. Billionaire? With shaking hands, Brielle picked up the magazine and flipped to the article. Words jumped out at her. Notoriously private financial genius Cassian Wells, worth an estimated $2.8 billion. Wells Industries CEO, first public relationship since his broken engagement to socialite Vanessa Harrington 2 years ago. The world seemed to tilt beneath her feet. Brielle put the magazine back and walked out of the store in a daze, her groceries forgotten. At home, she searched his name online and was flooded with results. Cassian Wells, financial prodigy who turned his family's struggling company into a global powerhouse. Cassian Wells, one of America's youngest billionaires. Cassian Wells, whose rare public appearances made headlines. The man she'd been seeing, the man who worked in finance that was one of the wealthiest men in the country, and he'd never said a word about it. Her phone rang, Cassian's number. "Hello?" she answered, her voice distant even to her own ears. "Brielle?" he said, sounding tense. "Have you seen it? The tabloid?" "Yes." There was a heavy silence. "I can explain," he finally said. "Can you?" Brielle felt tears forming. "You let me fall for someone you never told me existed. How could I believe any of this is real?" "It is real," Cassian insisted. "More real than anything in my life." "Then why lie?" "I never lied," he said. "I just didn't tell you everything." "That's the same thing." Brielle wiped angrily at her tears. "All this time I've been sharing my life with you, and you've been hiding who you really are." "I'm still the same person," Cassian said, his voice desperate now. "The man who met you at the airport, who talks with you for hours, who didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth." Brielle cut him off. "I need time to think, Cassian. Please don't call me." She hung up before he could respond and sank onto her couch, hugging a pillow to her chest. Everything made sense now. The private meetings, the expensive gifts, the vague answers about his work. She had fallen for a man who didn't exist, or at least not completely. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Cassian. "Please let me see you. I can explain everything." Brielle turned off her phone and closed her eyes, trying to reconcile the Cassian she knew with the powerful billionaire the world saw. Were either of them real? And more importantly, could she ever trust him again? Outside her window the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. But for Brielle, the world had never felt darker or more uncertain. 3 days passed, and Brielle hadn't answered any of Cassian's calls or texts. Her phone was filled with his messages, each one more desperate than the last. "Please let me explain. I wanted to tell you, but I was afraid. The man you know is the real me. I've never felt this way about anyone." Brielle read them all but couldn't bring herself to respond. The betrayal cut too deep. She'd opened her heart to him, shared her dreams and fears, while he'd kept his entire life hidden from her. At the studio, she tried to focus on her students, but her mind kept drifting back to Cassian. Had any of it been real, or was she just a novelty to him? The woman who hadn't known who he was, who'd treated him like a regular person. "Miss Brielle, you okay?" asked Zoe during her lesson. "You've been staring at the wall for like 5 minutes." Brielle shook her head and forced a smile. "Sorry, sweetie. Let's try that high note again." After Zoe left, Brielle was locking up when her cousin Marcus called. "Have you seen the news?" he asked without saying hello. "What news?" "Turn on Channel 6 right now." Brielle went to the small TV in her office and switched it on. A reporter stood outside a large glass building with Wells Industries displayed prominently above the entrance. "Where CEO Cassian Wells made a rare public statement today," the reporter was saying. "The normally media-shy billionaire addressed rumors about his personal life that have been circulating since photos of him with an unidentified woman appeared in tabloids last week." The screen cut to Cassian standing at a podium, looking immaculate in a tailored suit, but with dark circles under his eyes. Brielle's heart clenched at the sight of him. "I usually don't comment on my private life," Cassian said, his voice steady, but his eyes tired. "But I want to make one thing clear. The woman in those photos deserves respect and privacy. She wasn't aware of my public profile when we met, and that's on me. I asked the media to leave her alone. She's not a story. She's someone I care about deeply." The camera flashed back to the reporter. Sources close to Wells Industries say this is unprecedented behavior from the notoriously private CEO, who has never before acknowledged a personal relationship in public. Marcus's voice came through the phone, which Brielle had forgotten she was holding. "Brie? That woman is you, isn't it?" "I have to go," she whispered, hanging up. Brielle sat down hard in her office chair, staring at the TV as they moved on to other news. Cassian had gone public, something he clearly hated doing, to protect her. But was it enough? Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Ms. Sanders, this is Elena Diaz, Mr. Wells's assistant. He asked me to check if you're experiencing any harassment from the press. He's concerned about your safety and privacy. Please let us know if you need anything." Before Brielle could respond, there was a knock at the studio door. She looked through the peephole and saw a tall, elegant woman in a pantsuit holding a tablet. "Miss Sanders?" the woman called through the door. "I'm Elena Diaz. Mr. Wells sent me to make sure you're all right." Reluctantly, Brielle opened the door. "I'm fine," she said coldly. "No reporters have found me yet." Elena nodded, her expression professional but sympathetic. "Mr. Wells has arranged for security to keep an eye on your studio and home just in case. They'll be discreet." "I don't want his security," Brielle snapped. "I don't want anything from him." Elena's expression didn't change. "I understand you're upset, Miss Sanders, but Cassian, Mr. Wells, is genuinely concerned. The press can be ruthless once they get a story in their teeth." "Why are you really here, Ms. Diaz?" Brielle asked, crossing her arms. Elena sighed, dropping her professional demeanor slightly. "He's a mess, Miss Sanders. I've worked for Cassian for 8 years, and I've never seen him like this. He's not sleeping. He's cancelling meetings. This morning, I found him staring out the window for 2 hours straight." Despite herself, Brielle felt a pang of concern. "That's not my problem." "No, it's not," Elena agreed. "But I thought you should know that in all the years I've known him, he's never once let anyone get close enough to hurt him like this. Whatever was between you two, it meant something to him." Elena handed Brielle a small envelope. "He asked me to give you this. Whether you read it is up to you." After Elena left, Brielle opened the envelope with trembling fingers. Inside was a handwritten note on expensive stationery. "Brielle, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm asking for a chance to explain. Not over the phone or through texts. In person. When we met, you saw me, just me. Not my money, not my company, not my family name. For the first time in my adult life, someone hugged me without wanting something from me. I should have told you the truth sooner. I was selfish. I wanted to keep being the man you saw at the airport. Just Cassian, not Cassian Wells, CEO and billionaire. If you'll give me 1 hour of your time, I'll tell you everything. After that, if you never want to see me again, I'll respect your decision. I'll be at the bench where we sat overlooking the city tomorrow at 7 p.m. Yours, if you'll have me, Cassian." Brielle read the note 3 times, her anger warring with the ache in her heart. She missed him. Despite the lies of omission, despite the hurt, she missed the way he listened, the rare smile that transformed his face, the gentleness in his touch. But could she trust him? The next day, Brielle debated until the last minute whether to meet Cassian. At 6:45 p.m., she found herself driving to the park, still unsure what she would say to him. When she arrived, she saw him sitting on their bench, looking out over the city. He wore jeans and a simple sweater, more casual than she'd ever seen him. His shoulders were hunched, and even from a distance she could see the tension in his body. For a moment she considered turning around and leaving, but then Cassian glanced over his shoulder, as if sensing her presence, and their eyes met. The naked hope and fear on his face made her decision for her. Brielle walked slowly to the bench and sat down, leaving space between them. "Thank you for coming," Cassian said softly. "I wasn't sure you would." "I almost didn't," she admitted. He nodded, accepting this. "I don't know where to start." "The beginning would be good," Brielle suggested, her voice cooler than she felt. "Who are you, really?" Cassian took a deep breath. "My name is Cassian James Wells. I'm 30 years old. I took over my family's investment firm when I was 24, after my father died. I expanded it into technology and clean energy, and it grew bigger than anyone expected. The money came fast, and with it all the complications of wealth." He paused, looking down at his hands. "My mother never approved of my vision for the company. She wanted me to stick to the safe, traditional investments my father preferred. We fought about it constantly, until she cut ties with me 3 years ago. When she died last month, I found out she'd left everything to my cousin, nothing to me." "I'm sorry," Brielle said, softening slightly. "Don't be. We made our choices." Cassian looked at her directly now. "But it meant that when I met you at the airport, I'd just come from finalizing her estate. I was raw. And then this beautiful, honest woman hugged me like I mattered to her, even though she didn't know me." Brielle remembered that moment, how still he'd gone, how he hadn't pulled away. "I should have told you who I was at the coffee shop," Cassian continued. "But when you didn't recognize my name, when you treated me like a normal man, I couldn't give that up. I've spent my entire adult life being Cassian Wells, the CEO, the billionaire, the guy people want things from. With you, I was just Cassian." "But you weren't being honest," Brielle pointed out. You let me believe you were someone else. I never pretended to be someone else, he argued. Everything I told you about myself was true. I just left out the parts I thought would change how you saw me. That's not your decision to make, Brielle said, anger rising again. You didn't trust me to see past your money. Can you blame me? Cassian's voice rose slightly. Every relationship I've had since making my first million has been tainted by it. Do you know what my ex-fiancée said when she ended our engagement? I tried to love you, Cassian, but your money is the most interesting thing about you. The raw pain in his voice made Brielle wince. I'm not her, she said quietly. I know that, Cassian replied, his voice softening. That's why it killed me. Not to tell you, but I was scared. The longer I waited, the harder it became. He ran a hand through his hair. I've handled billion-dollar deals with less anxiety than I felt every time I thought about telling you the truth. They sat in silence for a moment, the city lights beginning to twinkle below them as dusk fell. What do you want from me, Cassian? Brielle finally asked. A second chance, he said immediately. A chance to start over with complete honesty between us. No more secrets, no more hiding. Brielle shook her head. It's not that simple. Your life is completely different from what I thought. You're in the public eye, there are expectations, complications. None of that matters if I don't have someone who sees me for who I am, Cassian said, reaching for her hand, but stopping short of touching her. And you're the only one who ever has. The sincerity in his eyes made Brielle's heart ache. She wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that what they'd shared was real. I need time, she said finally. This is a lot to process. Cassian nodded, disappointment clear on his face, but resignation too. I understand. Take all the time you need. I'll be here if you're ready. As they stood to leave, Brielle surprised herself by reaching out and squeezing his hand briefly. Thank you for telling me the truth now. The hope that flared in his eyes almost broke her resolve, but she needed to think clearly, away from his presence. A week later, Brielle was teaching when her phone rang with a Nashville area code. Her stomach dropped. It had to be about her father. Hello, she answered, stepping into the hallway. Brielle Sanders? A formal voice asked. This is Dr. Michaels from Memphis General. I'm calling about your father, Harold Sanders. Is he? Brielle couldn't finish the question. He's had a turn for the worse, Dr. Michaels said gently. We don't expect him to last more than a few days. He's asking for you. Brielle closed her eyes. After everything, after all the disappointment and criticism, her father wanted her at his bedside. I'll come, she said. Tell him I'll be there tomorrow. After hanging up, Brielle leaned against the wall, overwhelmed. She had to book a flight, arrange for someone to cover her lessons, pack, and all while processing the emotional weight of her father's impending death. Without thinking, she pulled out her phone and called Cassian. Brielle? He answered on the first ring, hope and caution in his voice. My father's dying, she said, her voice breaking. The doctor says he only has days. I'm so sorry, Cassian said softly. What can I do? The simple offer of support, with no questions or expectations, broke something in Brielle. The tears she'd been holding back spilled over. I don't know, she admitted. I have to fly to Memphis tomorrow and I'm not ready to face him, not after our last conversation, but I can't not go and breathe, Cassian interrupted gently. One thing at a time. Do you want me to come with you? The offer surprised her. You would do that? Of course I would, he said, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. You shouldn't have to go through this alone. But your company, your meetings, can wait, he finished firmly. This is more important. Brielle hesitated. Having Cassian with her would make things easier, but it would also complicate their already complicated relationship. No, she decided reluctantly. I need to do this myself, but thank you for offering. Then at least let me arrange your travel, Cassian said. One less thing for you to worry about. This time Brielle agreed. Okay, thank you. I'll text you the details soon, he promised. And Brielle, I'm here if you need me, for anything. After they hung up, Brielle returned to her lesson, but her mind was spinning with thoughts of her father and Cassian and all the upheaval in her life. An hour later, her phone buzzed with a text from Cassian with her flight information. She was booked on a direct flight to Memphis, departing at 9 a.m. the next day, first class. There was also a confirmation for a rental car waiting at the airport and a room at a hotel near the hospital. Too much, she texted back. Please let me do this, came his reply. It's not about money, it's about making a difficult time a little easier. Brielle gave in, too emotionally drained to argue. Thank you. The next morning, as Brielle waited at her gate, She was surprised to see Elena Diaz approaching her. "Ms. Sanders," Elena greeted her. "Mr. Wells asked me to give you this before your flight." She handed Brielle a small gift bag. Inside was a soft travel pillow, a paperback copy of Brielle's favorite novel, which she'd mentioned to Cassian weeks ago, and a handwritten note. "For the journey. Call me day or night if you need anything. C." The thoughtfulness of the gesture brought tears to Brielle's eyes. "He wanted to come himself," Elena said, "but he didn't want to pressure you." "Thank you for bringing this," Brielle said, clutching the bag to her chest. Elena hesitated, then added, "I've never seen him care about anyone the way he cares about you, and I've known him a long time." As Brielle boarded her flight, she found herself wondering if she'd been too harsh with Cassian. Yes, he should have told her the truth sooner. But hadn't she seen the real man beneath the billionaire facade? The man who remembered every detail she shared, who laughed like he was remembering how, who looked at her like she was the only person in the world. The flight to Memphis gave her time to think. By the time she landed, she'd made a decision. After dealing with her father, she would give Cassian another chance. With open eyes this time. The hospital was exactly as she remembered it. Sterile, cold, and filled with the beeping of machines. Brielle took a deep breath before entering her father's room. Harold Sanders looked small in the hospital bed, his once imposing frame withered by illness. His eyes were closed, but they opened when Brielle sat in the chair beside him. "You came," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "You asked me to," Brielle replied, trying to keep the hurt from her voice. Harold reached for her hand, surprising her. In all her adult life, he'd rarely initiated physical contact. "I've been thinking," he said slowly, each word an effort, "about what you said last time, about me never seeing you." Brielle held her breath, not daring to hope. "I was wrong," Harold continued, "so focused on what I wanted for you that I never saw what you wanted for yourself. Your mother always said I was too stubborn for my own good." Tears filled Brielle's eyes. "Dad, let me finish," he insisted. "I don't have much time." He took a labored breath. "I looked up your studio online, saw the reviews. You're doing good work, Brielle. Important work. I was too blind to see it." "Thank you for saying that," Brielle whispered, squeezing his hand. "I'm proud of you," Harold said. The words Brielle had waited her entire life to hear. "Should have told you sooner." They talked for as long as Harold had strength, about her mother, about Brielle's childhood, about the studio. He asked her questions about her life, really listening to her answers for what felt like the first time. And then, as evening fell, Harold brought up the tabloid photos. "Saw you in a magazine at the nurse's station," he said, a hint of his old sharpness returning. "With some rich fellow. He treating you right?" Brielle hesitated, then found herself telling her father everything. Meeting Cassian at the airport, falling for him, discovering his secret, and her confusion now. "Do you love him?" Harold asked bluntly. "I don't know," Brielle answered honestly. "Maybe. But how can I be sure it's real when he hid so much from me?" Harold was quiet for a moment. "You know, your mother didn't tell me everything about herself when we met." "What do you mean?" "She let me believe she came from nothing like me. Found out 6 months in that her family was old money, that she'd walked away from it all to be a music teacher." A faint smile crossed his face. "I was furious. Felt betrayed." "What did you do?" Brielle asked, fascinated by this glimpse into her parents' history. "Stormed off. Didn't speak to her for 2 weeks. Harold's eyes grew distant with the memory. "Then I realized something. She'd hidden her wealth because she wanted to be loved for herself, not her family name. And I did love her. The real her." He squeezed Brielle's hand weakly. "Don't waste time on pride, baby girl. If he's a good man who loves you, that's what matters. The rest is just details." Brielle sat with her father until he fell asleep, thinking about his words. Could she see Cassian's deception in a different light? Was he, like her mother, simply trying to be loved for himself? As she left the hospital that night, Brielle checked her phone and found a simple text from Cassian. "How are you holding up?" Instead of texting back, she called him. "Brielle," he answered, concern in his voice. "Is everything okay?" "Not really," she said honestly, "but talking to my dad helped. He's different, softer. People often are when facing the end," Cassian said gently. "How are you feeling?" "Overwhelmed, sad, but also relieved in a way, like we're finally having the conversations we should have had years ago." "I'm glad you have this time with him," Cassian said. "It sounds important." "It is," Brielle agreed. Then, after a pause, he saw the tabloid photos. "Asked about you." "Oh?" Cassian sounded wary. "What did you tell him?" "Everything," Brielle admitted. "The good and the bad." "And what did he say?" Brielle smiled slightly, remembering her father's blunt advice. He told me not to waste time on pride if you're a good man who loves me. There was a heavy silence on the line. I am, Cassian finally said, his voice thick with emotion. And I do. The simple declaration made Brielle's heart race. You do? Love you? Yes, Cassian said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. I think I started falling the moment you hugged me in that airport. By the time I kissed you, I was already gone. Brielle closed her eyes, letting his words wash over her. I need to focus on my dad right now, but when I get back to Atlanta, we should talk, really talk. I'll be waiting, Cassian promised. For the next 3 days, Brielle spent every moment she could at her father's bedside. They talked, shared memories, and slowly healed the rift that had grown between them over the years. Harold grew weaker each day, but his mind remained clear. Cassian called every evening to check on her, never pushing, just offering a listening ear and words of support. He sent food to her hotel room when she forgot to eat, and arranged for fresh flowers to be delivered to her father's hospital room each morning. On the 4th day, Harold took a sharp turn for the worse. The doctors said it was only a matter of hours. Brielle sat beside him, holding his hand as his breathing grew more labored. Dad, she said softly, is there anything you need, anyone you want me to call? Harold shook his head slightly. Just you, he whispered. All I need is you here. Tears rolled down Brielle's cheeks. I'm not going anywhere. Be happy, Harold said, his voice barely audible. Promise me. I promise, Brielle said, squeezing his hand. That man, the one from the magazine. Harold's eyes were closing. Cassian, Brielle supplied. Give him a chance, Harold managed. Life's too short for half measures. Those were his last words. An hour later, Harold Sanders slipped away peacefully, his daughter's hand in his. Numb with grief, Brielle called Cassian. He's gone, she said when he answered. I'm so sorry, Cassian replied, his voice filled with genuine sorrow. What can I do? I don't want to be alone, Brielle admitted, surprising herself with the vulnerability. I know it's a lot to ask. I'm already on my way, Cassian interrupted. I'll be there in 2 hours. True to his word, Cassian arrived at her hotel room just under 2 hours later. When Brielle opened the door, he simply opened his arms, and she fell into them, finally letting herself break down completely. He held her while she cried, stroked her hair, and whispered comforting words. When she finally pulled back, embarrassed by the damp spot on his shirt, he cupped her face gently. Don't apologize, he said, reading her expression. That's what I'm here for. Over the next 2 days, Cassian helped Brielle with everything. The funeral arrangements, the paperwork, cleaning out her father's small apartment. He was a steady presence at her side, never intruding but always there when she needed him. At the funeral, he sat quietly beside her, holding her hand. When she stood to speak about her father, his encouraging nod gave her the strength to make it through her eulogy. Afterward, as they walked back to the car, Brielle stopped suddenly and turned to him. Thank you, she said, for everything. You don't need to thank me, Cassian replied. This is what people do when they care about each other. Is that what we're doing? Brielle asked. Caring about each other? Cassian looked at her intently. I think we're doing a lot more than that. At least, I am. In that moment, standing in the cemetery where they'd just buried her father, Brielle made a decision. Life was indeed too short for half measures. I want to try again, she said. Us, I mean, a real chance with everything out in the open this time. The smile that broke across Cassian's face was like the sun emerging from behind clouds, warm, bright, and full of promise. Nothing would make me happier, he said, taking her hand. When you're ready, when you've had time to grieve, I'll be waiting. As they walked hand in hand to the car, Brielle felt a strange mix of sadness and hope. She'd lost her father, but his final gift to her had been wisdom and perhaps a chance at real love. What she didn't know was that back in Atlanta, a storm was brewing. Vanessa Harrington, Cassian's ex-fiancée, had seen the tabloid photos too, and she wasn't happy about being replaced. The wheels of her revenge were already in motion, targeting the woman who had so easily captured the heart she'd failed to win. 2 weeks after her father's funeral, Brielle returned to Atlanta and her normal routine, except nothing felt normal anymore. Grief still weighed heavily on her heart, but alongside it was a new feeling, hope for what might develop between her and Cassian. Since their return from Memphis, he'd been patient and attentive, giving her space to grieve while making it clear he was there whenever she needed him. He called every day, sent flowers to the studio, and occasionally left small, thoughtful gifts, a book she'd mentioned wanting to read, her favorite coffee beans, a handwritten note of encouragement. They were starting over, taking things slowly. Tonight would be their first real date since she'd agreed to give their relationship another chance. As Brielle got ready, she felt nervous in a way she hadn't before. Now she knew exactly who Cassian was, not just the private, thoughtful man she'd fallen for, but also Cassian Wells, the billionaire CEO whose name opened doors and whose face occasionally appeared in business magazines. "This is ridiculous," she muttered to herself as she tried on a third outfit. "He's seen you crying in sweatpants. He's not going to care what you wear." She finally settled on a simple emerald green dress that brought out the warmth in her brown skin. As she put the finishing touches on her makeup, her doorbell rang. Cassian stood on her porch looking both familiar and somehow new. He wore dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that emphasized his broad shoulders, casual but elegant. In his hands was a small bouquet of wildflowers. "You look beautiful," he said, his eyes warming as they took her in. "Thank you," Brielle replied, accepting the flowers. "These are lovely." "I remembered you said you preferred wildflowers to roses," Cassian said, following her inside while she found a vase. "More character, I think you called it." The fact that he remembered such a small detail from one of their early conversations made Brielle smile. "Where are we going tonight?" "I thought we could try something different," Cassian said. "There's a small jazz club downtown. Very low-key, good music. The owner's an old friend. He'll make sure we have privacy." As they drove to the club in Cassian's sleek car, a comfortable silence fell between them. It was broken when Cassian spoke, his voice thoughtful. "I've been thinking about how to do this right," he said, glancing briefly at her. "Being with me comes with complications. I want to make sure you're prepared for that." "You mean the press, the attention?" Brielle asked. Cassian nodded. "That's part of it. Once they confirmed who you are, the tabloids did some digging. They know about your studio where you live. Some of the gossip sites have been speculating about us." Brielle had seen some of the headlines. "Wells's mystery woman, who is Brielle Sanders?" and "Billionaire and the music teacher, unlikely romance." "I can handle gossip," she said with more confidence than she felt. "It's not just gossip," Cassian said seriously. "My world comes with expectations, social obligations, scrutiny. People will have opinions about you, about us. Some of my business associates won't understand what I see in a regular person." "And what do you see?" Brielle asked softly. Cassian pulled the car over to the side of the road and turned to face her fully. "I see a woman who is completely herself," he said, his eyes intense. "Who built a business from nothing because she believes in the power of music. Who treats people with kindness not because of what they can do for her, but because that's who she is. Who hugged a stranger in an airport because she saw someone who needed comfort." He reached out and took her hand. "I see the woman I love." Brielle's breath caught. It wasn't the first time he'd said he loved her, but it was the first time since they'd started over. "I love you too," she admitted, the words feeling right as they left her lips. "But I'm scared, Cassian. Your world is so different from mine." "Then we'll build our own world," he said simply. "One that takes the best parts of both." He leaned across the console and kissed her, a kiss full of promise and understanding. When they broke apart, Brielle felt steadier, more certain. "Now," Cassian said, starting the car again, "let's go hear some music." The jazz club was intimate and warm, with exposed brick walls and soft lighting. As promised, they were led to a private corner booth with a perfect view of the small stage where a quartet played soulful melodies. Throughout the evening, Brielle noticed how Cassian was different in public now that she knew who he was. He was more alert, more aware of their surroundings. Occasionally, he nodded politely to someone who recognized him, but his focus remained entirely on her. "Is it always like this?" she asked during a break between sets. "Always being watched?" "To some degree," Cassian admitted, "but you get used to it, and it's worth it for the moments that are just ours." As if to prove his point, he took her hand and led her to the small dance floor where a few other couples swayed to the music. Holding her close, he moved with surprising grace for such a powerful man. "I didn't know you could dance," Brielle said, smiling up at him. "There's a lot you still don't know about me," Cassian replied, a twinkle in his eye, "but I'm looking forward to sharing everything." The evening was perfect, full of music, laughter, and moments of connection that reminded Brielle why she'd fallen for Cassian in the first place. By the time he walked her to her door, she felt like they'd taken an important step forward. "Thank you for tonight," she said, unlocking her door but not going inside yet. "Thank you for giving me another chance," Cassian replied, his hand gently cupping her cheek. "I promise I won't waste it." He kissed her goodnight, a kiss that lingered with sweetness and restrained passion. As he turned to leave, Brielle caught his hand. "Would you like to come in?" she asked, surprising herself with her boldness. Cassian's eyes darkened with desire, but he shook his head. "Not tonight. When that happens, I want it to be perfect. No rush, no uncertainty." The respect in his decision only made Brielle want him more, but she nodded in understanding. "Good night, then." "Good night, Brielle," he said, kissing her once more quickly. "I'll call you tomorrow." As she watched him drive away, Brielle touched her lips, still feeling his kiss. For the first time since discovering his secret, she felt truly hopeful about their future. Across town in a luxurious penthouse apartment, Vanessa Harrington sipped champagne as she scrolled through photos on her tablet. Photos of Cassian and Brielle at the jazz club, dancing, laughing, kissing. Her perfectly manicured nail tapped against the screen, right on Brielle's smiling face. "So this is the woman who replaced me," she murmured. "How quaint." Vanessa was a vision of polished beauty, sleek blonde hair, flawless makeup, designer clothes. At 32, she had built a reputation as one of Atlanta's premier interior designers, catering to the wealthy elite. But her greatest accomplishment in her mind had been her engagement to Cassian Wells, until he'd broken it off 2 years ago. "She won't last," Vanessa said to the empty room. "Cassian needs someone who understands his world, someone like me." She picked up her phone and dialed a number. "Richard," she said when a man answered, "I need you to dig deeper on Brielle Sanders. Everyone has secrets. Find hers." Over the next few weeks, Brielle and Cassian settled into a relationship that felt both new and familiar. They went on quiet dates, spent evenings at her small house listening to music or talking for hours. And slowly, Brielle began to see more of Cassian's world. He took her to his penthouse apartment, a stunning space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Despite its grandeur, it felt strangely impersonal, like a high-end hotel rather than a home. "It doesn't feel like you," Brielle observed as she wandered through the sleek modern rooms. "That's because it isn't," Cassian admitted. "I bought it because it was expected for someone in my position, but I prefer my cabin in North Georgia. It's the only place that feels like home." "Will you show me someday?" Brielle asked. Cassian's face lit up. "I'd love to." This weekend, the cabin turned out to be a beautiful timber and stone structure, nestled in the mountains, surrounded by trees and overlooking a small lake. Inside was warm and welcoming, with comfortable furniture, shelves filled with books, and a magnificent stone fireplace. "You built this?" Brielle asked in amazement as Cassian gave her a tour. "With some help," he said, a hint of pride in his voice. "My grandfather taught me carpentry when I was young. It was the only time my father let me be a normal kid, working with my hands instead of studying business strategies." As the weekend unfolded, Brielle saw a side of Cassian she'd never seen before. Relaxed, playful, completely at ease. He cooked for her, simple but delicious meals. They hiked through the surrounding woods, went swimming in the lake, and sat on the porch watching the sunset, talking about everything and nothing. At night, by the fire, Cassian finally shared the full story of his broken engagement to Vanessa. "We were together for 2 years, he explained, staring into the flames. "It made sense on paper. She comes from a wealthy family, knows how to navigate social events, has her own successful business. My father would have approved." "But," Brielle prompted gently. "But I never felt like she saw me," Cassian said. "She saw Cassian Wells, CEO. The name, the money, the status. When I talked about stepping back from the company someday, living a simpler life, she laughed like it was a joke." He turned to look at Brielle, his eyes serious. "The breaking point came when my mother cut ties with me. Vanessa was furious. Not because I was hurt, but because we lost the connection to my mother's social circle. She actually suggested I apologize to my mother and do business her way, just to maintain appearances." "That's awful," Brielle said, taking his hand. "I ended it the next day," Cassian continued. "She didn't take it well. Accused me of having an affair, threatened to ruin my reputation. When that didn't work, she switched tactics, begging me to reconsider, saying she'd change." "Do you ever hear from her now?" Brielle asked. A shadow crossed Cassian's face. "Occasionally. She sends messages on holidays, shows up at charity events she knows I'll attend, always perfectly polite, but with an edge of expectation, I guess. Like she's waiting for me to realize I made a mistake." "And did you make a mistake?" Brielle couldn't help asking. Cassian pulled her close. "No, the mistake would have been marrying someone who didn't love me for who I am. He kissed her forehead. Something I never have to worry about with you. That night, in front of the crackling fire, their relationship deepened. Cassian's touch was both gentle and passionate as he showed Brielle how much he loved her. Afterward, lying in his arms, she felt a sense of peace she'd never known before. "I wish we could stay here forever," she murmured sleepily. "Maybe someday we can," Cassian replied, kissing her hair. They returned to Atlanta reluctantly the next day to their jobs and responsibilities, but something had shifted between them, a deeper understanding and commitment. The following week, Brielle was at the studio when Elena called. "Ms. Sanders, Mr. Wells asked me to invite you to a charity gala this Saturday," she said formally. "It's for the Wells Foundation's music education initiative. He thought you might be particularly interested." Brielle felt a flutter of nervousness. This would be their first public event together, a statement to the world that they were a couple. "I'd love to come," she said, "but I don't exactly have gala-appropriate clothing." "Mr. Wells anticipated that concern," Elena replied, and Brielle could hear the smile in her voice. "He's arranged for a stylist to bring some options to your home tomorrow, unless that makes you uncomfortable." Brielle thought about it. Normally, she'd resist such an extravagant gesture, but this was Cassian's world and she wanted to fit in, at least for his sake. "That would be fine," she agreed. "Thank you, Elena." "One more thing," Elena added. "There's been some press interest in your relationship. The Foundation's PR team would like to brief you before the event, just so you're prepared for any questions." Reality set in a little more. "Of course, whatever you think is best." When she told Cassian about the call that evening, he frowned. "I should have spoken to you directly. I didn't want you to feel pressured." "It's okay," Brielle assured him. "I want to support you. And music education is something I believe in too." Cassian's expression softened. "That's why I thought of you. The Foundation is launching a program to bring music lessons and instruments to underprivileged schools. I'd actually love your input on it." "I'd be happy to help," Brielle said sincerely. "There's something else," Cassian said, suddenly looking nervous. "My sister will be at the gala. She's flying in from London specifically for it." "You have a sister?" Brielle was surprised. "You've never mentioned her." "Sophia," Cassian nodded. "She's 2 years younger. We're complicated. She sided with our mother during the falling out, but we've been working on repairing our relationship since Mother died." "And she wants to meet me?" Brielle asked. "She's curious," Cassian admitted. "You're the first woman I've been serious about since Vanessa." The gravity of that statement hung between them. This wasn't just a date. It was Cassian introducing her to his family, to his world. "What if she doesn't like me?" Brielle voiced her fear. Cassian took her hands. "It doesn't matter. I love you. That's what counts." But as Saturday approached, Brielle couldn't help worrying. She wanted to make a good impression, not just for Cassian's sake, but for her own. She needed to prove to herself as much as to others that she belonged at his side. The stylist who arrived at her house on Friday was a cheerful woman named Mia, who put Brielle at ease immediately. "Mr. Wells was very specific," Mia said as she unzipped garment bags. "He wanted options that would make you feel comfortable while still being appropriate for the event, and he emphasized that the final choice is entirely yours." The dresses were beautiful, elegant without being overstated, in colors that complemented Brielle's skin tone. She finally selected a deep blue gown with subtle beading that caught the light when she moved. It was the most beautiful thing she'd ever worn. Saturday evening arrived, and with it Cassian in a perfectly tailored tuxedo that made Brielle's heart race. His eyes widened when he saw her. "You are breathtaking," he said, his voice low and reverent. "You clean up pretty well yourself," Brielle replied, trying to hide her nervousness with humor. In the car, Cassian sensed her anxiety. "Remember, these people are just people," he said, squeezing her hand. "Some of them are actually quite nice." Brielle laughed, some of her tension easing. "And the others?" "The others don't matter," Cassian said firmly. The gala was held at the city's most prestigious hotel, its ballroom transformed into an elegant wonderland of lights and flowers. As they entered, Brielle was acutely aware of the eyes that turned their way, the whispers that followed them. Cassian kept his hand at the small of her back, a constant reassuring presence as he introduced her to what felt like hundreds of people, business associates, foundation board members, fellow philanthropists. Most were polite, some were genuinely warm, and a few gave her cold, assessing looks that made her skin crawl. "Cassian, darling," a musical voice called out, and a striking woman in a red dress approached them. She had Cassian's dark hair and sharp features, softened into feminine beauty. "Sophia," Cassian greeted her with a kiss on the cheek. I'd like you to meet Brielle Sanders. Brielle, this is my sister, Sophia Wells Hamilton. The famous Brielle, Sophia said, her British accent pronounced after years of living in London. Her eyes, the same deep brown as Cassian's, studied Brielle with open curiosity. I've been dying to meet the woman who's made my brother smile again. It's a pleasure to meet you, Brielle said, extending her hand. Sophia ignored the hand and pulled her into a quick hug instead. We're practically family. Handshakes are too formal. The unexpected warmth eased some of Brielle's anxiety. As the evening progressed, Sophia stayed close, her sharp wit and genuine interest making Brielle feel less like an outsider. He's different with you, Sophia observed, as they watched Cassian speaking with some donors across the room. More himself. With Vanessa, he was always so controlled. You knew her well? Brielle asked cautiously. Unfortunately, Sophia rolled her eyes. She was mother's choice, not Cassian's. Perfect on paper, empty underneath. I never understood what he saw in her. Before Brielle could respond, she felt a presence behind her. Turning, she found herself face to face with a stunning blonde woman whose smile didn't reach her eyes. Sophia, how lovely to see you, the woman said, air-kissing Sophia's cheeks. And you must be Brielle. I've heard so much about you. Vanessa, Sophia said, her tone suddenly cool. I didn't know you were on the guest list. The foundation has always been dear to my heart, Vanessa replied smoothly. Especially the music program. I was on the planning committee after all. She turned to Brielle, her gaze assessing every detail of her appearance. Cassian has always had an eye for beauty, but I must say, you're not his usual type. The words were spoken with a smile, but laced with venom. Brielle felt her cheeks warm. I didn't realize Cassian had a type, she replied, keeping her voice steady. Oh yes, Vanessa said with a tinkling laugh. Typically more established. In society, I mean. Vanessa, Sophia cut in sharply. Don't you have someone else to bore with your passive-aggressive small talk? Vanessa's perfect smile never faltered. Always the protective sister. How sweet. She turned back to Brielle. We should have lunch sometime. I could give you some tips on navigating Cassian's world. It can be so overwhelming for outsiders. Thank you, but I think I'll manage, Brielle said coolly. Of course you will, Vanessa agreed with false sweetness. Until you don't. Well, enjoy your evening, ladies. As she glided away, Sophia muttered under her breath, I never understood why they let vipers like her into charity events. Completely ruins the positive energy. Brielle couldn't help but laugh, her tension breaking. Is she always like that? Worse usually, Sophia said, but don't worry about her. Cassian saw through her a long time ago. Speaking of Cassian, he appeared at Brielle's side, his hand finding hers automatically. Everything all right? I saw Vanessa talking to you. Everything's fine, Brielle assured him. Your sister was just defending my honor. Cassian looked at Sophia with grateful surprise. Were you now? Someone has to, Sophia shrugged. And I like this one, Cass. She's real. The approval in Sophia's voice meant more to Brielle than she expected. For the rest of the evening, she felt more confident, more at ease in the glittering crowd. Later, as they danced, Cassian held her close. You were amazing tonight, he murmured. Everyone loves you. Not everyone, Brielle said, thinking of Vanessa's cold eyes. Vanessa doesn't matter, Cassian said firmly, and she's just jealous. She could never understand what we have. As the night drew to a close, Brielle realized she'd actually enjoyed herself. Yes, Cassian's world was different from hers, more formal, more conscious of appearances, but it wasn't as intimidating as she'd feared, and with him by her side, she felt she could navigate it. What she didn't notice was Vanessa watching them from across the room, her eyes narrowed in calculation as she spoke quietly with a man in a dark suit. Richard, her private investigator. You found something? She was asking. Maybe, Richard replied. There's a cousin with a record, and some financial troubles at her studio last year. She almost lost it before a mysterious investor stepped in. Before she met Cassian, Vanessa clarified. Her interest peaked. Months before, Richard confirmed. The timing doesn't work for him to be the investor. Interesting, Vanessa mused, watching as Cassian led Brielle from the ballroom, his hand protectively at her back. Keep digging. Everyone has secrets. We just need to find the right one. The morning after the gala, Brielle woke up in Cassian's penthouse for the first time. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating his sleeping face. He looked younger in sleep, the lines of responsibility smoothed away. She slipped out of bed quietly, pulling on one of his shirts and padded to the kitchen to make coffee. As she waited for it to brew, She scrolled through her phone and froze. There, on a society news website, was a photo of her and Cassian from the gala, his arm around her waist, both of them smiling. The headline read, "Wells makes it official. Billionaire CEO debuts new love at charity gala." The article was mostly positive, describing her as refreshingly genuine and noting her background in music education. But there was a quote from an unnamed source close to the couple that made her stomach clench. "It's a charming story, the billionaire and the music teacher, but one has to wonder how long it can last. Their worlds are so different, and Cassian Wells has always been ambitious. Is this a serious relationship or just a phase before he settles down with someone more suitable for his position?" Brielle put the phone down, a shadow falling over her happiness. Was that what people really thought? That she was just a temporary diversion? "Hey!" Cassian's voice came from behind her as his arms wrapped around her waist. "Why are you up so early?" She showed him the article without speaking. He read it quickly, his expression darkening. "This is garbage," he said dismissively. "Probably planted by someone with an agenda." "But what if they're right?" Brielle asked quietly. "What if our worlds are too different?" Cassian turned her to face him, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Do you love me?" "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "And I love you," he said simply. "The rest is just noise." He kissed her, a kiss that chased away her doubts and reminded her of what was real between them. When they broke apart, she smiled up at him. "Coffee?" she offered. "Later," he replied, lifting her into his arms and carrying her back to the bedroom. Hours later, as they finally had that coffee on his balcony, Cassian brought up an idea that had clearly been on his mind. "Move in with me," he said suddenly. Brielle nearly choked on her coffee. "What? Not here?" he clarified quickly. "I know the penthouse isn't your style, but we could find a place together, something that feels like both of us. Or I could move into your house if you prefer." "Cassian, we've only been together for a few months," Brielle reminded him. "I know it seems fast," he acknowledged, "but when you know, and I know I want to build a life with you, Brielle." The sincerity in his eyes made her heart swell, but something held her back. "I need to feel like I'm standing on my own 2 feet, she explained, "especially now with all this attention. If I move in with you, people will say I'm just after your money." "Since when do you care what people say?" Cassian asked gently. "Since my life became tabloid material," Brielle said with a sigh. "I just need a little more time, okay, to get used to all of this." Cassian nodded, hiding his disappointment. "Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." But as they settled back into their routines that week, a new complication arose. Brielle began receiving strange calls at the studio, hang-ups or silence on the line. One evening, she felt like someone was watching her as she locked up, but when she looked around, the street was empty. She mentioned it to Cassian, who immediately became concerned. "I'm getting you security," he said firmly. "That's an overreaction," Brielle protested. "It's probably nothing." "It's not nothing if it's making you uncomfortable," Cassian insisted. "Please, let me do this, for my peace of mind, if not for yours." Reluctantly, Brielle agreed to a security detail, discreet, he promised, to keep an eye on her in the studio. It made her feel safer, but also reminded her of how different her life had become since meeting Cassian. Then came the email. It arrived at her studio account on a Tuesday afternoon, a simple message with an attachment. "Ms. Sanders, before you get in any deeper with Cassian Wells, you should know what you're getting into." The attached file contains information about the real Cassian, the one the public doesn't see. "A concerned friend." Brielle stared at the message, her finger hovering over the attachment. Part of her wanted to delete it immediately, to trust what she knew of Cassian, but another part, a smaller, insecure part, wondered if there was something he still hadn't told her. With a deep breath, she clicked on the attachment. It opened to reveal documents, financial records, news clippings, and photographs. As she scrolled through them, her heart sank. There were photos of Cassian with Vanessa from their engagement, looking happy, in love. There were business documents suggesting that his company had been involved in some questionable deals in developing countries. And most disturbing, there was a report about a former employee who had filed a harassment claim against him, settled out of court. Was this the real Cassian? The man behind the man she thought she knew? With shaking hands, Brielle picked up her phone and called the one person who might have answers. "Eleanor? It's Brielle. I need to talk to you about Cassian. Can we meet?" Eleanor met Brielle at a small cafe far from both the studio and the Wells Industries headquarters. She arrived wearing oversized sunglasses and a scarf covering her hair, looking more like a celebrity avoiding paparazzi than an executive assistant. "Thank you for meeting me," Brielle said as Elena slid into the booth across from her. Of course, Elena replied, removing her sunglasses. You sounded upset on the phone. What's happened? Brielle pulled out her tablet and showed Elena the email and attachments. I received this today. I need to know if any of it is true. Elena scanned through the documents, her expression growing darker with each swipe of her finger. When she finished, she looked up at Brielle with a mixture of anger and concern. This is Vanessa's work, she said firmly. I'd bet my life on it. But is it true? Brielle pressed. Elena sighed. Some of it is based on truth, but twisted to look as bad as possible. The photos with Vanessa, yes, they were engaged and appeared happy in public, but behind closed doors, he was miserable. And the business deals? Those contracts in developing countries were negotiated before Cassian took over, Elena explained. One of the first things he did as CEO was to review and revise them to ensure fair labor practices and environmental standards. It cost the company millions, but he insisted it was the right thing to do. Brielle nodded, feeling slightly relieved. What about the harassment claim? Elena's expression hardened. That's the most manipulative part of this whole package. The claim was filed against Cassian, yes, but it wasn't his action being questioned. A female employee was being harassed by a senior executive. When she reported it to Cassian, he fired the executive immediately. The executive retaliated by manipulating the woman into filing a claim naming Cassian as complicit. Why would she agree to that? Money, threats, who knows? But during the investigation, she broke down and admitted the truth. Cassian could have pressed charges for false allegations, but he didn't. Instead, he settled with her, paid for her therapy, and helped her find a job at another company where she wouldn't have to face the gossip. Brielle sat back, processing this information. So all of this is just Vanessa trying to break us up? Without a doubt, Elena confirmed. She's never accepted that Cassian ended their engagement, and seeing him truly happy with you must be driving her crazy. What should I do? Brielle asked. Talk to Cassian, Elena advised. Show him the email. He deserves to know someone is spreading this kind of information. Brielle nodded, thanking Elena for her honesty. As they parted, Elena touched her arm gently. Cassian isn't perfect, Brielle, but he's a good man who loves you deeply. Don't let Vanessa poison what you have. That evening, Brielle waited nervously for Cassian to arrive at her house. She'd asked him to come over, saying they needed to talk, and she could hear the concern in his voice when he agreed. When he arrived, his worry was evident in his eyes. What's wrong? He asked as soon as she opened the door. Brielle led him to the living room where her tablet sat on the coffee table. I received this today, she said, showing him the email and documents. Cassian's face darkened as he read through everything. When he looked up, his expression was a mixture of anger and pain. This is why you wanted to see me. You believe this? His voice was strained. I didn't say that, Brielle countered. I wanted to talk to you about it. Elena already explained most of it, but I thought you should know someone is spreading this stuff around. Cassian ran a hand through his hair, his frustration evident. Vanessa, he muttered. It has to be her. That's what Elena said too. I'm sorry you had to see this, Cassian said, sitting down heavily on the sofa. This is exactly what I was afraid of. My past, my position affecting you. Brielle sat beside him, taking his hand. I just want to know if there's anything else I should be prepared for. Any other concerned friends who might send me things from your past? Cassian looked directly into her eyes. I've made mistakes, Brielle. I've made business decisions I later regretted. I've trusted people I shouldn't have. But I have never intentionally hurt anyone, and I have never lied to you since we started over. The sincerity in his voice reassured her. I believe you, she said simply. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly. I can't lose you, he whispered against her hair. Not over lies and manipulation. You won't, Brielle promised. But we need to deal with Vanessa. This has to stop. Cassian nodded, his expression resolute. Leave it to me. The next day, Cassian arranged a meeting with Vanessa at his office. Neutral territory with plenty of witnesses. Elena showed her in, her professional demeanor firmly in place despite knowing what was coming. Vanessa entered like she owned the place, dressed impeccably in a designer suit, her blonde hair gleaming. Cassian, darling, she purred. This is a pleasant surprise. Sit down, Vanessa, Cassian said coldly, remaining behind his desk. Her smile faltered slightly at his tone, but she took a seat, crossing her legs elegantly. What's this about? Have you reconsidered my proposal for redesigning your vacation properties? This is about the email and documents you sent to Brielle, Cassian said bluntly. Vanessa's expression didn't change, but a slight tightening around her eyes betrayed her. I have no idea what you're talking about. Don't lie, Cassian said, his voice dangerously quiet. We traced the email. It came from an account registered to one of your assistant designers, but the IP address matches your home network. Now Vanessa's composure slipped. You can't prove anything. I don't need to prove it for a criminal case, Vanessa. Just for a restraining order. Cassian leaned forward. This stops now. The calls to her studio, the watching her from your car, the emails, all of it. You can't be serious about her, Vanessa said, her voice rising. She's nobody. A music teacher from a nothing family. What can she possibly offer you that I couldn't? Love, Cassian said simply. Real, honest love, without conditions or expectations. Something you never gave me. Vanessa's face contorted with anger. You'll regret this. She'll never fit into your world. She'll embarrass you, drag you down. Your board members are already talking. Let them talk, Cassian replied calmly. My personal life is none of their business, or yours. Now you have two choices. You can sign this agreement promising to cease all contact with Brielle and myself, or I can call security to escort you out and have my lawyers file for that restraining order this afternoon. He pushed a document across the desk. Vanessa stared at it, her eyes blazing with humiliation and rage. You'll come back to me, she said, her voice trembling. When she breaks your heart, and she will, you'll remember what we had. What we had was a relationship built on appearances and mutual convenience. Cassian corrected her. What I have with Brielle is real. Sign the paper, Vanessa. With a shaking hand, Vanessa picked up the pen and scrawled her signature across the bottom of the document. Then she stood, gathering the tattered remains of her dignity. I hope she's worth it, she said, her voice cold. She is, Cassian confirmed, not bothering to stand as Vanessa stormed out of his office. After she left, Elena poked her head in. That went well, she said dryly. Cassian laughed despite himself, about as well as could be expected. Will she honor the agreement? Probably not immediately, Elena admitted, but the threat of legal action should keep her in line eventually, and I've already arranged for additional security for Brielle just in case. Thank you, Elena, Cassian said sincerely, for everything. Just doing my job, she replied with a smile. And for what it's worth, I agree with what you told Vanessa. Brielle is worth it. Over the next few weeks, life settled into a new normal for Brielle and Cassian. The strange calls stopped, and Brielle no longer felt watched. Cassian had explained his confrontation with Vanessa, and while Brielle was relieved, she couldn't help feeling that the whole situation had forced their relationship to evolve more quickly than she'd been prepared for. One evening, as they sat on her porch swing, Cassian brought up the topic that had been on both their minds. I've been thinking about what you said, about needing to stand on your own feet, he began, and I want you to know I respect that, but I also want us to move forward together. Brielle leaned her head on his shoulder. I want that too. I'm just not sure what it looks like, given how different our lives are. Maybe they don't have to be so different, Cassian suggested. I've been considering making some changes. What kind of changes? Cassian took a deep breath. I'm thinking about stepping back from day-to-day operations at Wells Industries. Not completely, not yet, but moving into more of a chairman role, letting the executive team handle more. Brielle sat up, surprised. Because of me? Because of us, Cassian corrected. But also, for me. I've been running at full speed since my father died. I'm tired, Brielle. Tired of board meetings and quarterly reports and always being on. I want more time for the things that matter. You, music, maybe even building something with my hands again. The sincerity in his voice touched Brielle deeply. Are you sure? Your company is such a huge part of who you are. It's a part of what I do, not who I am, Cassian said firmly. You've helped me see that. And speaking of your influence, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small envelope, handing it to her. Inside was a check, a donation to Harmony Studios for an amount that made Brielle's eyes widen. Cassian, this is too much, she protested. It's from the Wells Foundation, not from me personally, he explained, for a new scholarship program for underprivileged students. You'd have complete control over how it's implemented. Brielle stared at the check, conflicted. It was a generous, thoughtful gift that could help so many young musicians, but it also highlighted the vast difference in their financial positions. I don't want you to think I'm trying to buy your affection, Cassian said, reading her expression. If it makes you uncomfortable, we can find another way. It's not that, Brielle said slowly. It's just, sometimes the gap between us feels so wide. You can write a check that would change dozens of lives without thinking twice. I stress about paying the studio rent every month. Cassian took her hands. Money doesn't define who we are, Brielle. It's just a tool, a resource. What matters is what we do with it, how we use it to reflect our values. His words resonated with her. Wasn't that what she believed too? That music was valuable, not because of its price tag, but because of how it enriched lives. You're right, she admitted. And this scholarship program could help so many kids who wouldn't otherwise have the chance to learn music. So you'll accept it? Cassian asked, hope in his eyes. On one condition, Brielle said. I want to contribute to the foundation too, not money, but time. I want to help design the program, maybe teach some of the students myself. Cassian's face lit up. I was hoping you'd say that. Your expertise would be invaluable. As they discussed the details of the scholarship program, Brielle felt something shifting inside her, a new understanding of how she and Cassian might build a life together that honored both their worlds. 3 months later, Brielle stood backstage at the grand opening of the Wells Foundation Music Center, a state-of-the-art facility in a formerly abandoned school building. The center would house the scholarship program, provide practice rooms and recording facilities for young musicians, and offer free concerts to the community. Brielle had been instrumental in its design and implementation, working alongside Cassian and the foundation team to create something truly special. Today was the culmination of those efforts, a ribbon-cutting ceremony, followed by a concert featuring some of the scholarship students. Nervous? Cassian asked, coming to stand beside her as she peeked through the curtains at the gathering crowd. A little, she admitted. This is a lot bigger than my studio recitals. You'll be amazing, he assured her, kissing her temple. You always are. The ceremony went perfectly. Sophia, who had flown in for the occasion, handled the formal introductions. Cassian gave a brief speech about the Foundation's commitment to arts education and then surprised everyone by inviting Brielle to the podium. None of this would have been possible without the vision and expertise of Brielle Sanders, he said, his pride evident in his voice. Her passion for music education and her belief that every child deserves access to the arts has shaped every aspect of this center. As Brielle stepped up to speak, she felt a momentary flutter of anxiety. The audience was filled with Cassian's world, wealthy donors, business associates, foundation board members. But when she began to talk about the power of music to transform young lives, her nervousness disappeared. This was her passion, her expertise. Here she stood on equal footing with anyone. After the ribbon cutting, the student concert began. Watching her young musicians perform, some of whom had never touched an instrument before the scholarship program, filled Brielle with a joy that brought tears to her eyes. You did this, Cassian whispered, his arm around her waist as they watched from the wings. We did this, she corrected him. Together. Later, at the reception, Brielle found herself surprisingly comfortable mingling with the donors and board members. Many expressed genuine interest in her teaching methods and asked thoughtful questions about the program. You're a natural at this, Sophia observed, joining Brielle by the refreshment table. The society ladies are already plotting to get you on their charity committees. Brielle laughed. I don't know about that, but I'm starting to see that there's room for me in this world, as long as I stay true to myself. That's exactly what Cassian needs, Sophia said warmly. Someone who won't get lost in all of this. She waved her hand to encompass the elegant reception, someone who reminds him of what's real. As the evening wound down, Cassian found Brielle deep in conversation with a renowned music educator from the City Symphony. I hate to interrupt, he said apologetically, but could I steal Brielle away for a moment? There's something I need to show her. He led her through the building, past the new classrooms and practice rooms, to a small courtyard garden that had been part of the renovation. The space was beautifully lit with string lights, with a stone bench in the center, surrounded by flowering plants. What do you think? Cassian asked, gesturing to the garden. The landscapers just finished it yesterday. It's beautiful, Brielle said, taking in the peaceful space. A perfect spot for students to take a break or find inspiration. That's what I thought too, Cassian agreed, but there's one feature they haven't installed yet. He pulled a small box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. I thought we could add a plaque, he said, his voice suddenly nervous, commemorating the spot where you agreed to marry me, if you agree, that is. Brielle's heart seemed to stop, then race forward. Cassian, he took her hand. I know we come from different worlds, Brielle, but these past months have shown me that we can build our own world together, one that takes the best of both. I love you for your passion, your honesty, your heart. Will you marry me? Tears filled Brielle's eyes as everything they'd been through flashed through her mind. the chance meeting at the airport, the revelation of his identity, the challenges they'd faced together. "Yes," she said, her voice full of certainty. "Yes, I'll marry you." Cassian slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands trembling slightly. Then he pulled her close and kissed her with all the love and promise of their future together. When they returned to the reception hand in hand, Sophia took one look at them and let out a delighted squeal, rushing over to embrace them both. Elena noticed next, her professional demeanor cracking into a wide smile as she caught sight of the ring on Brielle's finger. News spread quickly through the room, and soon they were surrounded by well-wishers. But in the midst of the excitement, Brielle and Cassian only had eyes for each other. "Are you ready for this?" Cassian asked quietly, nodding toward the crowd. "It won't always be easy." "I know," Brielle replied, "but we'll face it together. That's what matters." 6 months later, Brielle stood in the back room of a small chapel in the North Georgia mountains, just a short walk from Cassian's cabin, now their cabin. She wore a simple but elegant white dress, her natural curls adorned with small white flowers. "You look beautiful," Sophia said, adjusting Brielle's veil. As maid of honor, she'd taken her duties very seriously, coordinating with the small team of wedding planners to create exactly the intimate personal ceremony Brielle and Cassian wanted. "Is everyone here?" Brielle asked nervously. "Just the people who matter," Sophia assured her. "Family and close friends, just like you wanted." The guest list had been deliberately small. Brielle's cousins and aunts, Cassian's sister, and a few trusted business associates like Elena, and friends from both their worlds. No press, no society photographers, no one who was there for appearances rather than genuine happiness for the couple. Music began to play, a string quartet performing a piece Brielle had arranged herself. Taking a deep breath, she stepped out of the room and began her walk down the aisle. Cassian waited for her at the altar, his face lighting up as she appeared. He looked handsome in a dark suit, but what struck Brielle most was his expression, pure joy and love, with none of the guardedness she'd seen when they first met. As she reached him, he took her hands, his eyes never leaving hers. "You're everything I ever wanted but didn't know to ask for," he whispered. The ceremony was simple and heartfelt. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promises not just of love and fidelity, but of partnership, respect, and understanding of each other's worlds and dreams. "I promise to support your passion for music and education," Cassian vowed, "to create a life with you that balances both our worlds. To remember always that our greatest asset isn't wealth or status, but the love we share." "I promise to stand beside you in all your endeavors," Brielle replied, "to be your safe harbor from the demands of your position, to remind you always of the man I met that day in the airport, the one who needed a hug from a stranger and held on like he'd found something precious." When they were pronounced husband and wife, Cassian pulled Brielle into a kiss that felt like coming home and starting an adventure all at once. The reception was held on the grounds of the cabin, with tables set up overlooking the lake. As evening fell, lights twinkled in the trees and music filled the air. Some of Brielle's students performing alongside professional musicians, a beautiful blending of their worlds. "Happy?" Cassian asked as they swayed together for their first dance. "Completely," Brielle assured him, resting her head on his chest. "Though I still can't believe how we met. What if I had never hugged the wrong man that day? Then I would have spent my life not knowing what I was missing," Cassian said, pulling her closer. "But somehow I think we would have found each other anyway. Some things are just meant to be." As they danced beneath the stars, surrounded by the people they loved, Brielle knew he was right. Their journey hadn't been easy, and there would be challenges ahead as they continued to navigate the balance between his wealth and her independence, his public position and her private nature. But the foundation they had built was strong: mutual respect, honest communication, and a love that had begun with a mistaken hug but had grown into something true and lasting. 3 years later, Brielle sat on the porch of their cabin, watching Cassian chase their 2-year-old daughter, Melody, across the lawn. Their life had found a rhythm that worked for both of them, dividing their time between Atlanta and the cabin, with Cassian working remotely more often than not. Wells Industries continued to thrive under the executive team Cassian had assembled, with him providing vision and guidance rather than day-to-day management. The music center had expanded to 3 locations across the city, with Brielle overseeing the curriculum and teaching masterclasses. And most importantly, they had built a family together, one based on love, understanding, and the blending of their different worlds. Melody squealed with delight as Cassian caught her and swung her into the air. Brielle smiled, her hand resting on her growing belly where their second child, a boy, was just beginning to show. "Mama!" Melody called, wiggling out of her father's arms and running toward Brielle. "Play music!" "In a little while, sweetheart," Brielle promised, pulling her daughter onto her lap. After dinner, Cassian joined them on the porch, sitting beside his wife and daughter. "She's definitely your child," he said with a smile. "Music is already her favorite thing." "Along with Daddy's airplane rides," Brielle added, smoothing Melody's wild curls. As the sun began to set over the lake, casting golden light across the water, Cassian put his arm around Brielle's shoulders, pulling her and Melody close. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" Brielle asked, looking up at him. "For hugging the wrong man that day in the airport," Cassian replied, his eyes full of love. "For seeing me, really seeing me, when no one else did. For building this life with me." Brielle leaned up to kiss him softly. "Thank you for holding me back," she whispered. "Like you meant it." And as darkness fell, the sound of Brielle playing the piano drifted through the open windows of the cabin, a melody of her own composition that told their story, of chance meetings, difficult choices, and a love strong enough to bridge two different worlds. Inside the cabin, framed on the wall of their living room, hung a simple note in Cassian's handwriting, the one he'd left for Brielle years ago when she'd nearly flown away from him forever. "You hugged the wrong man, but I knew, in that moment, I'd never want another woman's arms again. If you'll let me, I'll be at gate 9 waiting, hoping. Yours." She had let him, and he had been hers ever since. Just as she had been his, from the moment a lonely billionaire and a heartbroken music teacher found each other in the busy terminal of Hartsfield-Jackson Airport, proving that sometimes the greatest love stories begin with the simplest human connection, a hug that changed everything. The end.